I'm your host Casino from casino.com. I'm the digital alchemist, and in today's video, we're going to talk about how to get your first web design clients. Now, even though you already have web design clients, I still believe that you may get some value out of this video because I'm going to break down the 3 phases that I recommend if you're getting started, and even if you're just beyond getting started, but just the basics that help me in my day-to-day freelancing business, and I hope it's going to help you too. So the first phase is the build phase. It's the building phase. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, first of all, you should build your skills. Now, it may sound like this is just freelancing 101, but you'd be surprised how many people, they want to get into the business and not completely understand, especially with everything that's happening. But one key component of being successful, I really need to stress that out because I get so many people that ask me that question, and when I look at their skills, I still think that they first need to improve it. Now, the good news is that it's never been easier to just grow your skills, even for free. I often talk about that, and I'll keep on talking about that because I think many people don't realize that what we get today for free here on YouTube, we used to pay for, and we used to pay a lot of bucks just to get some education. And now, you can be living anywhere on the planet as long as you have a computer, even if it's not a really good computer, but as long as you have a computer and an internet connection, you can get started. But it starts with your skills. You need to know that if you have no money, this is not an excuse anymore. Like I just said, you can learn here on YouTube. You can get free trials on premium websites, but just YouTube alone, you can get started. I know some web designers that just got started on YouTube, and then with free tools like Code Academy, Khan Academy, you can learn pretty much anything you want. And once again, here we're talking about web design. We're not talking about becoming a full stack developer, although I believe that even if you wanted to become a full stack developer, you could still learn it here on YouTube. But when it comes to web design, when I say you should build your skills, it's just simply HTML, CSS, and then you start learning how to create a basic web page, learn responsive design, just the principles. Just create one page and apply the responsive principle. And then you can move on to a content management system, also called a CMS. And if you know anything about my channel, you know that I'm well versed into WordPress, the WordPress ecosystem. And the next step will be to choose a page builder or a theme builder. But let's just get started with that. HTML, CSS, and just start learning WordPress. I often get the question, how long do you think it's going to take for me to actually go from knowing nothing to actually start freelancing? Well, I'm not the type of YouTuber that's going to tell you that in 2 weeks you'll be up and running. Sorry for that, because that's just not gonna happen. But that being said, I believe it really depends the time you have on your plate. If you start working today, each and every day, and you work a few hours per day, you could probably get started as a junior in 3 to 6 months. I know some people, they were faster than that. Some people were slower than that. So it depends on the rate at which you learn. So that's one key component. But if you put in the work, if you follow the tutorials that I have on my channel, and there are some great channels here on YouTube, I truly believe that someone that's really motivated, within the time frame of 3 to 6 months, you can get started actually making money selling websites. Now, of course, you probably won't have the same quality that you will get in a few years. Of course, but that's just with everything. You need to get started somewhere. But you can definitely start in a few months, start making money. When I say build your skills, it's also the skills of, can you sell a website? Are you confident enough to go into a meeting and convince someone to actually purchase services with you? So for that, I already created a video, but basically, the more you're going to practice, the better you're going to get. Now, I created a full video, so I went really in depth. So I will put a link in the description when I post the video, but I went really in depth. So watch that video and you will know everything about how to get confident when you're just getting started. But I'm stressing that point because many people think that the skills is just the web design and web development skills and Photoshop skills. That's not enough. And if you know anything about me, I like to to give examples. So in soccer, I love soccer, and we call it football on one part of the planet. There are some great players. I mean, my favorite player is Ronaldinho, if you know anything about football.
Or soccer.
And I think Ronaldinho is like the greatest of all time, just for me. You may be entitled to your own opinion, of course. I mean, that man was so talented, but it's like he didn't really have the discipline. It's not like Michael Jordan. If you take Michael Jordan, and now I'm talking about basketball, but if you take someone like Michael Jordan or Kobe Bryant, they had that discipline to practice, really be strict with themselves. And if I go back to Ronaldinho, he'd like partying. I mean, he probably had more talent than any other player out there, but he could have had even a greater career. Now, don't get me wrong, he had a great career. He had one of the best careers, but I still think that he could have gone better. Now, why am I talking about that? Well, just because if you have skills, if you're a good web designer, but if you don't know how to sell a project, if you don't know how to convince a client, then nobody really cares that you're good at creating websites, because at the end of the day, nobody's going to see your websites because you're never going to sell any website. So when I say that you should build your skills, it's all the skills. If you want to be a freelance, you want to build, of course, your core skills, design, development, and so on. But you also want to be good at the finances. You want to be good at finding new leads. You want to be good at copy. And yes, there's a lot of things involved, but don't be discouraged, because honestly, web design is fun, and being a freelance is also fun if you approach it with the right mindset. Now, if you approach freelancing with the mindset of an employee that just wants things to happen and be paid at the end of the month, it might be hard. But if you approach it with the mindset of that you're being your own boss, you need to take responsibility for what you're hoping for, then it becomes fun, because, I mean, at least for me, it becomes like a game. Now, I'm not saying that it's always easy. That wouldn't be true. Some days are harder than others, and there's so many things to do that sometimes you spend more time outside of just creating websites. But with experience, you get more organized, you make some partnerships, and you get all the fun back again. But there's a learning curve. The good news is that the entry level today has really opened up. Nowadays, like I said, you can get started in a few months, and depending on your existing skill set and the amount of time and effort you're willing to put in, it can really be a great career. I love when I create a website, and I cannot say the same thing for some of my friends that out of other businesses. When it's Monday, it's like they're depressed. And when you ask them on a Monday, you ask them, hey, how you doing? And they will go something like,
oh, like a Monday.
I love my Mondays, I love my Tuesdays. I mean, it's all about loving what you do. And I really believe that web design is something really fun, really great. You keep on learning all the time. Next, build your portfolio. It's going to be very hard for you to actually get your first client if you have nothing to show. Now, you may be wondering, okay, well, I'm watching this video because I want to get a client, and you're telling me that I should have a portfolio. There's a problem here.
Nope.
There isn't. Because it's really simple. You need a portfolio if you want to sell, okay? So how do we get a portfolio without clients? I've touched on this in many videos, but I'm going to say it one more time. You need just like 3 projects to get started. So you can look at your family, your friends, try to identify, maybe some people in the family have a business, although sometimes it can be tricky to work with family, but at least if you're trying to get that first project, just get the first project. Be upfront with them, and you don't necessarily need to ask for money. Actually, you should do it for free. And most of the time, I really advise against doing stuff for free, but when you're trying to build your portfolio, you really want to have the upper hand, and I'm going to explain. If you approach someone in your friends or your family and you're trying to convince them to pay you for your services while you're trying to get your portfolio, they're going to behave like every client. They want stuff the way they want to be done. But when you approach them with the mindset of, okay, this is how much it would have cost, but I'm going to offer it for free. But one of the conditions is that I get the final word when it comes to the design and how the website looks. Some people are going to tell you no. You're going to get many no's, but eventually you're going to get a yes. And you need to be smart there. If there's someone you know that has a business that's locally known, you should start with that one. Next, you could also go, and we'll talk about that later on in the video, but you could approach some local businesses. Maybe you don't know them directly, but maybe you know someone that works there. Maybe you can get introduced. The idea is that for the first 3 projects, you're going to offer it for free. and do the trick I just talked about. I want to tell people this is how much it would have cost, but here's the deal. I'm going to make you an offer you can't refuse. It's going to be free for you, but I have the final word on the design. And you put that on a paper, they sign, you sign, so that they cannot go back to their word and say, okay, we want to change this. Nope. It's an agreement, it's a contract, but of course you're going to build it to the best of your abilities. You're going to be upfront with them, saying you're just getting started, and that's why they have this deal. And if they come back in 2 years' time, they won't get it because you'll be experienced and it will be a lot more. And once you get that portfolio, and honestly, it really depends on your, once again, your skill set and how fast you can learn. But you could have a portfolio up and running in less than a month. I mean, I'm talking about very basic websites like home, about us, services, and the contact. Really small websites. But once you've done that, your portfolio is going to be your salesman or your saleswoman. That's what's going to sell. That's what's going to convince people in the next phases. Next, stand out. So the next phase is about you standing out. Now, how do you do that? Well, first of all, you should do what they call a SWOT analysis. So I don't know if you ever heard of the SWOT analysis, but basically it's identifying the strength, the weaknesses, the opportunities, and the threats of your business. So let's take an example because otherwise it's really theoretical. So let's say you start your freelancing business creating websites. And I'm not talking about an analysis that's going to take 60 pages and 2 years to create. Even just a brief SWOT analysis is going to help you, and most people don't do that. So let's be practical. Let's imagine that your strengths are the fact that you're really good at designing. So designing layouts, beautiful website, this is your strength. Now your weakness could be that you're terrible at coding. Maybe you're scared of PHP, CSS, HTML, JavaScript, and you're really terrible at coding. So we have our strength and our weaknesses. Now the opportunities could be that there's a new set of offices coming to town, like a big set of offices. And you know that many businesses are going to join your region where you live locally. So you know there's going to be a lot of potential business. And the threat could be that there's another freelancer or maybe another company, maybe a design studio. And they're also really good at web design, just like you are. But on top of that, they have a couple of developers. So that could be the threat for you, because when you're going to try to get a share of the market, that's going to be a threat, because where you have weaknesses, they have a double strength. So once you get that, you might ask me, okay, once I have the SWOT analysis, what do I do with it? Well, let's go to our next point. Next, create your offer. So as I'm still building up on my previous example, and in this case, once you know the strength, the weaknesses, the opportunities, and the threats, now you can craft a specific offer. Because what you want to do is to be upfront with the potential customer and also prepare, because they're going to ask you questions. Let me give you an example. So let's say you manage to get in touch with some of the businesses that are coming to your area, because there's a lot of new offices and many new businesses are coming. Maybe they get incentive from the government or whatever. But long story short, you manage to get in touch with a few businesses. So you're going to present your portfolio that we talked about in the first part of this video. And let's say that you wow them. Let's say that they're like, whoa, you definitely have something. The websites you create is definitely something that we want. But we also want a custom module created from scratch. We know it doesn't exist because we made our research and we want that developed from scratch. Can you do it? Now, if you recall, one of your weaknesses is that you're terrible when it comes to development, but more to that in a moment. Next, they say, okay, to be honest, we also had a meeting with your competitor today, and we also love their design and they have some developers. So what can you offer us? And just imagine that at that point, you haven't prepared anything. You just went in there and you thought you're going to sell a website. You're never going to get the business because you didn't prepare for the questions they're going to ask you. And that's the whole key to making that SWOT analysis and crafting your offer. And in that case, what could you say if they say precisely what I just talked about? Well, you could say, well, it's true that I don't develop because my core focus is on design. I'm an expert when it comes to design, but I'm partnering up with a developer. And by the way, of course, you wouldn't tell them that if it wasn't true. So part of the advice is that you should really partner with someone that's really good at what you're bad at. But then you could tell them, I'm going to be like your project manager and I'm going to manage the project. So you won't have to have multiple meetings with multiple people. But of course, if you want, it's still possible. But you could tell them, and now we're touching on the threat. You could tell them, my competitors, they're great. So they have everything in-house, but they're not really expert at anything because they do everything. Whereas in my case, I'm going to work with a developer that's really an expert when it comes to development, and I'm an expert when it comes to web design, UI, UX. And also, the advantage you have is that, contrary to big agencies or big companies, you get to speak to me directly. You won't have to go through 3, 4, 5 people just to get that button changed, just to get that image changed. So you see, I think you kind of get the idea. What I'm trying to say is that once you've made your SWOT analysis, that's how you're going to craft your perfect offer, because you will know what people are going to come at. You will know what they will ask you, what's your weaknesses, what's your strength. You've taken advantage of the opportunity, and you have an answer when it comes to your competition and the other threats, because there may be other threats. But one thing to remember here is that if you haven't done your SWOT analysis, how do you expect to create an offer that's going to convince people? Because if you go into a meeting and you're not prepared to answer those questions, it means that you won't have the confidence needed to make sure that those people get convinced. And to cut a long story short, how do you expect to convince people
if you don't convince yourself?
If you haven't prepared? And going back to my analogy with football or basketball or whatever, if you don't prepare for the next game, if you don't know your opponent, if you don't know what may happen, if you don't prepare for the different scenarios, then your only chance is luck. Like I often say, luck is not a strategy. You can win the lottery, but it's not a strategy. It's just you being lucky. And that's totally different. Next, network. When I talk about network, many people would think, yeah, how do I get leads online, Fiverr, Upwork, and so on? In my case, I don't really like working on those platforms because I've got a bad experience with them. I'm not saying it's the case for everyone, because I know people who completely crush the game on those platforms. But that being said, it's all about the strategy you want to have. One strategy could be going on Upwork, Fiverr, and having the lowest possible fees and competing on price. And for some people, it works. And once again, if I make an analogy, if you think about airlines, you think about Ryanair. For those of you who know Ryanair, Ryanair is a low-cost company. And I haven't looked recently, especially with all the things that happened, but they used to do really good. So it works, but it's not my strategy. And on the other hand, you have a company like Emirates or Lufthansa, which is more premium. So it's not really a right or wrong. It's more like, what do you prefer? Personally, I think that the low cost is a never-ending race to the bottom. So I wouldn't really touch on that. Next, forget about cold calling and emailing. So many people advise to start with cold calling and emailing, but in my opinion, that's spam. Now, once again, I don't want to make it a universal truth, because some people absolutely crush it. They're really good at it, and they approach cold calling and cold emailing with an ethical way. But in my opinion, and in the opinion of my mailbox, that's more like the exception than the rule. Because the rule is like, people just send you emails, they try to call you, they try to sell you stuff, to push it down your throat. And most people hate that. I think that the only way you can get business doing that is, first of all, if you're really good, but also if you happen to contact someone when they really need your services, and it's like a God-given sign. But once again, that's more luck than a strategy. Or you could get some people that don't know better, and it might work for the first time, but once they get to know more about the industry, it's not going to work anymore. So honestly, I don't think that doing cold calling and cold emailing is really going to help, especially when you're getting started, because you're going to get so many no's that it might break your confidence when you're getting started. Now, you might tell me, okay, but what do I do then? Because that's the only way I can potentially get leads. And I see all those people talking about how much money they make online and blah, blah, blah. Well, first of all, many people lie about what they make. That's the truth. And I have to talk about it. But many people would just lie about how much they make. And then there's always a rule in every economy, in every industry, that when everybody's doing the same thing, you need to stand out. And that brings me to my next point. I believe that the best way to do business, especially when you're getting started, is focus on face-to-face networking. Now, I know I'm the digital alchemist and I talk about face-to-face networking. Well, face-to-face networking, why does it work? Well, simply because even in the digital era, and as much as I love digital, we're still human beings. And okay, it can work if you do a webcam meeting or so, and we've been doing that a lot lately. But there's something different when people get to see your face, get to get a feel for whether they trust you or not. And it's completely a different dynamic than when you go on a platform like Fiverr or Upwork, because when people go there, they're looking for the cheapest developer, the cheapest designer most of the time. Whereas when you go in a face-to-face business network, you had to physically walk or take the bus or take your car. The level of engagement is different and people see you and the trust level is different. And if they like what they see, how you talk, and their gut feeling tells them, okay, I like that person. I'm not saying you're always going to get the business, but I believe you're going to get the business much faster than if you're trying to play the rat race on Upwork, Fiverr, and all those platforms. Now, where do you find those type of meetings? Well, I don't know where you live, but most countries have something like a chamber of commerce. So what you need to do is go there and just ask them, what are the local business events? Some are free, some you have to pay for. Now, don't break the bank. Don't go pay crazy amounts to attend business meetings. There are many free meetings you can go to, or even some networks, they're not free, but you can go like a couple of times or 3 times for free. And let's say there are 5 networks like that in your local area where you could go to 10 to 15 meetings without paying a dime, making some contacts. And then out of those 15 meetings, you could get your first client. And then you get the money to join one of those premium business networks. But I found that it works much better than trying to compete online. Now, that's the truth of today, and it may change tomorrow. So once again, when you're into the web design industry, and when you're an entrepreneur, actually, you need to be able to evolve quickly. So at the time of recording this video, that's the best strategy. Maybe in 6 months from now, I'll tell you something else. But as of recording this video, that's what I really recommend, and that's what I'm trying to apply. Also, that's what I preach, and that's what I wish someone had told me before. Now, if you want to create beautiful brand identity for your brand, your web design studio, or for your clients, well, you can download my brand identity guidelines for free. So initially it was built to work with Affinity Designer, but you can make it work with Adobe Illustrator with a workaround. So if you're interested, just go to casino.com/branding and follow the instructions on screen. So I hope you got value out of this video, and I hope it's going to help you really get started and getting up to speed with getting either your first client, your first set of clients, or just applying a simple principle that you can review every 6 months, every year, because the SWOT analysis is something you should do at least once a year, because things are not set in stone. Things move, and you should be able to move quick too. So that's it for this video. I hope to see you in the next one. And in the meantime, don't forget to invest
in your success.